Okay, now's the time for some questions and answers and some positive discussion. If people need to take a comfort break, by all means, feel free to do that. I'm going to, while you're thinking about questions that you might want to raise, I'm just interested from a personal interest perspective of whether the panel members feel the pension changes that have been introduced, or at least proposed to be introduced by the budget, are a good thing or a bad thing. And without trying to complicate the issue, let's think about it from the perspective of the employee, or the man on the top of the omnibus, or the man on the lady on the top of the omnibus, rather than how it impacts on employers, impacts on providers, impacts on trustees, etc. Just thinking about it from a public interest perspective. Stephen, good thing or bad thing?
I think they're a good thing. I think it opens up an interest that people didn't have before. They might suddenly get engaged in it because suddenly they can understand it and realise whatever they say they will get, and they have flexibility to do it as they wish. So I think it's a good thing.
Jonathan?
Yeah, no, definitely a good thing. I think it will increase interest in pensions because people will increasingly see it as their money and what they can do with it. But there is obviously that complexity when you decide to take it, and you're making sure that you're making the right decision.
Michelle, I think you already said in your presentation you thought it was a good thing.
Yes, we absolutely support the decisions that were in the budget, and as I said, our calls have gone up. We're taking double the volume of calls over the last few days since Wednesday, and they haven't all been about the budget. It's just people have started to think about pensions, so I think that is a good thing. However, if there's one thing that does, and I am pleased that we have moved into a new environment where there are no defaults. There isn't the natural sort of default of going somewhere. People have to sit and think about making decisions. If there's one area that I'm worried about, is I'm worried that people will paralyse with the choices that they've got. And again, from the calls that we're receiving, people are saying, oh, I can now take all my pension fund from April 15. Yes. And then they say, oh, that's really good. And then we explain to them that the £10,000 that they thought was in their pension fund, actually what they'll receive is the tax-free cash sum plus the less tax and the balance of the amount. So it'll actually only be 8,500. So that's the first thing that a lot of people have missed. And then the second thing is when you get the 8,500, why did you do that? Why did you take it out of a tax-friendly environment and put it into your bank account? What are you going to do with it next? And I'm fearful that people might make the transfer and then just freeze and not do anything. And of course we know that if they sit with the money in the bank account, then it won't provide for a very comfortable retirement. So I hope that the guidance is sufficient and pushes enough people to get the advice they need, that they don't paralyse with fear and they will actually do something and make the right decisions with their money.
Some words of caution, but generally positive. Ros?
I think the changes are fantastic news. Obviously, it's a shock to the system. We're used to having ordinary people being looked after or sort of herded in a particular direction without having to make their own choices. The kind of freedom and flexibility that was introduced in the budget last week is already available to those with lots of money. I don't believe that we could sit here and say it's not fair to allow everyone else to have those same freedoms. And I don't believe the majority of people can't be trusted with their own money. I think ultimately they're responsible. If they're responsible enough to save for retirement, then they're responsible enough to be trusted to spend the money wisely. Not everybody will, but not everybody saves for retirement in the first place. So is it that different?
Good. Are any members of the audience feeling that this is not a good thing? Show of hands. Who thinks this is not a good idea? Yeah. Comments? Questions?
I'm old enough to remember the 80s when people were given freedom of choice not to have to save in a retirement scheme through their employer. And what did many people do? Nothing at all. They didn't save, which is why we now end up with auto-enrolment. We now have auto-enrolment that is supposed to be taking care of people who wouldn't save, and we're going to help them to do that through auto-enrolment. And then when they get to the end of their savings plan, we're going to say, there you are, you're a large big pot, do whatever you like with it. That worries me intensely, because a lot of people, choice is great, but with a lot of choice, people are overwhelmed and they don't do anything. They put it in under their bank account, and the outcome of that for their retirement could be very, very, very difficult. So yes, I choice and letting people and not being a nanny state is a huge, big step forward, but that needs to be managed extremely well. Otherwise, I think people will be very apathetic and do nothing instead. That's my personal view.
That's interesting. I was at a meeting yesterday where one of the Treasury's senior policy advisors was also in the meeting, and her comments were that the government had been pleasantly surprised by the warmth of the reaction. They weren't expecting that the reaction would be as favourable as it has been. So I thought that was an interesting observation. Yep.
Thanks, Alan. Quick question for the panel, but just first of all a comment. I think this part of this is shameful politics, because the ideology of the government is so confused, one could argue. They don't trust people to save, therefore they nudge them through auto-enrolment. Over the last few years we've made requests of them to reduce and increase the gap limit, which they refused to do because they didn't want people to outlive their assets. And suddenly people have become freedom seekers overnight. So clearly there's a degree of politics in this, but our perspective is we welcome the framework of the changes, but I think Michelle is very wise when she says there is a danger of ultra-conservatism, which might be a necessary or unfortunate evil where the rules take us. So I think guidance is absolutely crucial. What the guys do post the event today, and Michelle and others, that will be the necessary protection. So my question on a more positive note would be, do the panel, Alan, think that as a result of these changes, governments will now stop messing about with our pension system and give us a period of stability to rebuild confidence?
I'll let Ros go first. Ros, will government stop meddling after this?
Well, we're going to have some more meddling this afternoon, I think, with an announcement on the charges cap for the accumulation phase of pension savings and auto-enrolment schemes. And that all has to fit together. I mean, you can see the pieces of the jigsaw falling into place. Sort out the state pension so it doesn't disincentivise private saving. A lot of the reason that people stopped saving in pensions was rational. You know, if you're going to end up on means testing in retirement, why bother putting money into a pension? Now we're going to have a system where there is a clear incentive to save and people can understand it. You know, you're going to get that 150 quid a week, 20 quid a day, whatever it is, from the state. You're going to want more than that. You've got to do something about it. Pensions is quite an efficient way, and it helps you not be able to access your money when you're young and maybe tempted to save it but leave it till later when perhaps you're a bit more responsible. I don't know what the messages will be. When you put your money into a pension fund, you want to know it's going to be managed well, but also that the charges will be fair. Again, the pensions industry has shot itself in the foot so many times by all the scandals and the unfair charges. The government's going to control that. I think there will also be an incentive now to answer the concerns about people, and Michelle saying, well, at retirement, you're just going to take the money, pay the tax and stick it in the bank. What's the point of that? I am absolutely sure that pension providers, when you reach the point of retirement, will say, take your tax-free cash, but you don't need to take the rest unless you're going to spend it. Leave it invested. That makes sense. If you don't need the money, then they will definitely encourage you in one way or another to just take the tax-free cash if you need it. Don't if you don't, because you can do it at any time you like and leave the rest of the money invested. So I'm hoping that actually the industry itself will, if you like, ensure that people are not ultra-conservative but have investment options remaining in retirement. Or later life, not even retirement.
So, Stephen?
I think what will happen, I mean, this is very early days, I think what will happen is what Ros mentioned earlier, that the providers will come up with solutions which will help. I can see deferred annuities becoming popular again. Yep. That people at retirement may purchase a deferred annuity for when they're at 70 or 75, which will then give them, they know they will never be destitute at a certain point, and then they have the freedom to do with the money, the rest what they've got left. And I can see that sort of thing developing again. also things like flexible annuities, which may have investment-linked elements within them. So, because suddenly it's a choice for an annuity. If annuity providers want to carry on, they will have to actually offer something that people want. So I can see that all developing, and it suddenly forces them into thinking what people may want and what they will purchase from them as a sale, as opposed to, well, they've got to do this anyway, so if we all look about the same, it doesn't really matter. So I think it will develop. It will just take time as we go through.
And I think it will probably need the regulators to free up some of the restrictions around what you can and can't offer in terms of annuities and call it an annuity. So, but I agree with you that some innovation in terms of more flexible annuities, drawdown options, possibilities to front load and back load the annuity to deal with healthcare costs at the back end, and probably a more active life early on in retirement when you want to go on cruises and holidays and things like that. Michelle, you wanted to come in.
In answer to one of the things that you asked was that do I think we're going to be subject to more legislation? Yes. It's a bit like a waterbed. One of the questions that I was asked quite often yesterday was, if I take all of my pension at once, will it affect what I can get to cover the cost of my care? So, there's that waterbed effect, and so, they've pushed one side of the waterbed down, something else pops up, so there'll be some more legislation. As far as, putting the money and whether the product providers keep it, I do hope the product providers come up with innovative solutions that work for drawdown sums that are going to be of the lower sums of money. Again, one of the questions that we had yesterday was somebody was doing drawdown at £25,000 per annum, and his total fee cost was £5,000 per annum. And that seems all in the wrong proportion. So I do hope people come up with products at fair prices, so that people don't just end up with the money sitting in the bank account. But I don't want those products then to become the default, in the same way as those of you that had endowment contracts, and when your endowment contract matured, there was another little booklet that came with the maturity papers that said, don't worry, if you don't want to do anything, you can just go into this carry-on product. I don't want the defaults to happen, and that's why the guidance is going to be so essential, that there's an intervention where somebody has the opportunity to talk about what they need, rather than just being moved from product to product.
Alan, sorry, can I? One thing that I did think about when they came up with this. Well, everybody will have a basic level, so as such, we can afford people to spend anything as they want, because it doesn't matter. They won't get anything more from us. I suddenly thought, well, why are they giving tax relief anymore?
That's the next piece.
So if they're suddenly not bothered about people needing to save because the subsistence level is there, what's tax relief for? So it does worry me that I think one thing that will come down the line is certainly tax relief at a higher rate, but maybe some change to tax relief.
I think we could head down the road of compulsion, or we could just head down the road where the government says, well, the employer contribution is your tax relief. We don't need to do anything else. And then you're free to do what you like with it. You can see there's a long-term game plan there. And tax relief is very expensive to the public purse. And at some point, it may go. But it could go, or could have gone, anyway, without the flexibilities. At least, from the individual's perspective, you've got the flexibilities. As to the point about products at retirement and drawdown being expensive, from what I can see, today the Treasury has announced that it will allow you to take your 25% tax-free cash, and there will no longer be any requirement to secure an income, which means that actually you can just take your tax-free cash and leave it in the pension fund. Yep. So you don't have to go into any kind of drawdown. The providers can just say, leave it where it is. With the cap coming on the charges on your pension accumulation product, you can see that there will be an option, a later life pension product that just rolls on from another product without having to go into the expense of drawdown with all the advisory and other costs. So actually, if you've got a charge cap of whatever it is, 0.7 or 0.75, that would be what you'd be paying even after you've taken tax-free cash. It would be completely different cost-wise from drawdown.
Certainly lots of food for thought in those areas. I'm going to throw it wide open now for comments and questions on any subject. Yes.
Thank you. I've been talking to a few companies. I come from the world of employee share plans. They're going great at the moment, and there is real concern with companies that with the great maturities that are coming out, these lump sums will cause a bit of a sort of a skilled workforce mass walkout where these people have invested wisely, etc. My question, I suppose, relating to the pension forum is, how will the new legislation impact on UK PLC skilled workforce? And do you suddenly think in a couple of years, as people get their head around it, we're suddenly going to see people hitting 55? Because certainly I'm 50, 51, and I'm suddenly now changing my thinking in the last week of, could I get out at 55 now because I can draw down? So are we going to lose a huge swathe of the skilled workforce?
And I'll throw that to the panel, but if there are any members of the audience who feel that they have a perspective from an employer perspective on that, then I'd welcome contributions from the floor as well. Stephen, you mentioned this a little bit at the end of your presentation. Do you want to elaborate in relation to the question?
Yeah, we struggle with recruiting skilled labour at the younger end, graduate engineers, that sort of experience. We struggle to recruit, and there's been a lot of competition for it. We don't struggle to retain our talent at the later end of the working life. They actually enjoy their job, they enjoy coming to work. It's a social thing as much as anything. So I don't think, certainly from our sort of industry, that is likely to happen too quickly. It may happen for some, but I think it could be the other way around. Instead of wanting to leave, they will want to reduce their hours and want to stay longer. So where they might have stayed till 60, I can see them wanting from 55 till 65, actually working 2-3 days a week and start to take some of their pension. So I can see the flexibility suddenly will increase an awful lot more. There's been a lot of talk about there isn't a retirement age anymore. People will retire at different stages and probably stop doing one job and may start doing a different type of role. I think that will increase as we go.
I think that as well. I'm already seeing it in my company, a very small company compared with yours. But you put that together with the flexible working applications, which is coming in June. You know, the media and the hype that is obviously going to come around that. Some people will put the two things together, particularly people in the middle or higher incomes. I'm anticipating lots of flexible working requests that we will possibly struggle to accommodate.
Well, speaking entirely personally, I can certainly recommend the idea of working 2 to 3 days a week between 55 and 65. So that describes exactly my personal position. Any other?
Hello, sorry, I was just going to pick up on that. I think one of the some of the feedback that I certainly get from organisations is that actually often it's about aligning what the employer wants and the employee wants, and often that can be a shared objective in the sense that employees may want to work longer, but most employees do not want to work forever. You know, most employees have some sort of aspiration towards retirement at some point, and even though that might push out a little bit, or it might go through a period of flexible working, ultimately most people do want to retire. And of course, most employers would expect their employees to actually retire at some point. So I think it's more a case of getting that aligned, and the best way probably to get that aligned is actually through things like guidance and education, so people actually understand what those options are.
And I also think, you know, the future of retirement is completely different from the past. These pension reforms facilitate the new future, which is, you know, perhaps a whole new phase of life after a full-time career, where you're working part-time, so retirement becomes this process, not an event. You're gradually cutting down. You can dip into your pension savings if you need to top up a declining income, or you can continue saving from your declining income if you can still live on that. But this matches the need for flexibility. You know, from the European perspective, other countries are locked into this idea that you can't increase retirement ages. And you've got very generous state pensions that are kicking in and giving people the wherewithal to just suddenly exit the labour force and try and live on the state. That is storing up big problems for Europe. Here in this country, I think we are opening the door to make it easier for people to keep working longer. And as you say, most people, when you ask them, don't want to stop altogether. They don't want to keep working full time. And even those that don't like their jobs don't want to stop, because although they may not like the work, they like the people they're working with. So it's about the social as well as the money.
It is.
And that's a much better future for everybody if you can start to engage with the idea of a phase of part-time work before you fully retire.
Next question.
Well, listening to Roslie's comments there, I think it's interesting to note that there's a lot of people in this country with defined benefit deferred pensions, which aren't covered by this sort of flexibility. So we've got a solution where the government feels confident about those people with DC pots reaching retirement, being able to manage the issues associated with selection rate products and everything else. From what you're hearing from government, are they going to liberate, to use the wrong phrase, the sort of entitlements which are tied up in final salary pension plans? Because I think that's going to be the next big issue that we all want to understand.
I think that is the next task. The budget already flagged up that this won't happen for DB schemes, and it can't really because there isn't any money, they're unfunded. But for funded pension schemes, most of which are in deficit, the idea of allowing people, perhaps with deferred benefits, to take some money, even if it's with some kind of penalty, is likely to be quite attractive to some of those with deferred entitlements, but equally quite helpful in improving the funding of the DB scheme too. So with the right wording, the right environment and the right safeguards, I think it makes a lot of sense for the government to be looking at that, and I'm sure they are. And once again, from the Treasury's perspective, as with the measures that we've had last week, it can bring in extra tax revenue to the Treasury because the money you take out will be taxed at your marginal rate. Whereas if you don't access it or just get a tiny amount of annual income, you may not pay much, if any, tax.
I can't see anything happening in that space until after April 15.
Oh yeah, that's a longer term project.
Primarily because there are too many other issues going on with DB in terms of collective defined contribution schemes. How are they DB or are they DC?
They have made
defined
more
ambition
difficult
schemes and so on.
by last week's
They are,
announcement.
Yeah. So there's kind of a lot of issues there, and I think the other significant issue that they're going to be grappling with is to what extent do they ban transfers from DB to DC? I mean, the government have already said that they don't feel that they can take the economic risk of allowing those transfers in unfunded public sector schemes like the civil service scheme, teachers, firemen and so on. The problem is I don't think that they can ban public sector unfunded schemes without banning public sector funded schemes like local government employees. And if you ban local government employees, it's a very short step there to banning private sector defined benefit schemes from allowing such transfers. So that's the kind of post-April 2015 environment. What happens between now and then? I mean, potentially people have a year to make these transfers before the new rules come in and stop them. So are we going to see a flurry of activity of people trying to transfer out of DB schemes in order to take this flexibility up? So, I mean, there's kind of lots of issues around the transition from here to the new world, quite apart from what the new world looks like.
I would imagine that the ending of contracting out from 2016 will be a kind of watershed period where you might see the government offering employers the flexibility for deferred members to be transferred out at a discount as a quid pro quo to help the funding. And it could end up that it's only the defined benefit unfunded schemes where transfers are banned, not the funded schemes.
Yeah. So lots of issues I think to sort out in that area, and I'm sure the government's going to have difficulties with this because the flexibility that has been announced in the budget is driven philosophically. That's why there was no consultation in advance, because you don't need to consult on something which is philosophical. What you consult on is how to execute the philosophical change that you want to make. So if philosophically you believe in flexibility and choice, why then would you ban transfers out of defined benefit schemes? So it's completely against the philosophy.
I don't think they will. Only for the unfunded.
So it's really economics that drive any considerations of a ban. So let's see where that one goes. But lots of issues I think to deal with in the short term. Any other questions? Yes, at the back.
Partly following up on what's been said, it's a little bit what Ross you said earlier on about other countries, more simplified system, very complicated, we're coming out of it. Can you clarify the context of these changes? Is there a model that the government of today is now saying this is where we're going to, and today we're only at the halfway stage, or are we in a very British way just pragmatically, I wouldn't say bumbling along, but we're just evolving as and when we go, political zigzagging, economics, as you say, and so on. But there is no clear model as such that we're aiming for. We're not aiming for the Australian model, we're not aiming for the Scandinavian model, we're just going along, and therefore all these changes we're talking about, it's not as if there ought to be a caveat, hang on a little bit, because we're only at the halfway stage. And therefore more's to come, you may want to back off until the rest comes, and then...
I may be very naive, and I may be far too optimistic, but I do believe there is a model. I do believe there is a thread running through all this. And you can follow it. Start with the flat rate state pension, get rid of the mass means testing, make it safe to save in a pension. Get auto-enrolment up and running, encouraging, nudging people to save, and make them believe it's worthwhile with the kind of budget changes that you had last week. I mean, certainly the comments that have followed it show just how unpopular some of the current system was, and how much support there is for the freedom and flexibility that we've got. Pensions starting to become lifetime savings, as Steve was saying. Pensions are the bit that's locked up, but they're part of a long-term savings picture. Ultimately, where does that lead you? That probably leads you to say you don't need any tax relief, and there may still be compulsion if auto-enrolment is considered to be not enough. Auto-escalation coming in would make sense because we know the current bit isn't enough. The bit that hasn't yet fallen into place or been part of the model, but hopefully will be, is how you fund social care, because that is the next pensions crisis. You know, the people who we were worried about with pensions in 20 years' time are going to have a real problem if there's no money for social care. And there are no incentives in the current system to save for social care. We need that, whether it's part of pensions that become, later life savings, which are both pensions and care, or whether it's a separate stream. I don't know how you bring the employer in, how you bring that perhaps insurance in. Can you build it into annuities? We've got the impaired life type annuities. Could that lead on to including some insurance for care? All of these things are falling into place. There is, I think, a thread. I may be completely wrong, and this could all be just political opportunism. The last week changes are clearly, you could paint them as politically motivated. I think there's an element of that, but at the end of the day, perhaps they were driven by the DWP finally convincing the Treasury, and the DWP, I think, has got this roadmap.
Any other comments from the panel?
I support what Ross has said. I do think, and I don't think enough comment was made about it at the time, that the single-tier pension reforms happening in 2016 and the announcements of last week were tied up in a sort of a brave new world of saying, actually it's down to the individual, because that's the only way we can resolve something which previously everybody had scratched their heads over and said this is unresolvable about how we were going to deal with the demographic time bomb. So I do think that, and it does seem to have had cross-party support as well. So I don't think I think for a while now, really since the Turner report, it does seem as though pensions has been taken out of the political game. However, it is still, there is still a massive burden for the state in terms of not just the social care but also the healthcare and the NHS of having an elderly population. So I don't think we're done yet. I think there's still, like I said, that waterbed effect where something's going to pop out, that they're going to have to do some more dramatic measures. It might be the removal of tax, it might be something like that in order to fund for later life.
I'm not sure about cross-party support. I think the Labour Party was stunned into silence, wasn't it? I agree that there is definitely a clear planned evolutionary thread to this. I think for once in Steve Webb we have a pensions minister who has been in office for more than 2 years, because I think before Steve Webb, I think on average we had more than one pension minister a year for the prior 10 years. And not only has he been in place for more than a couple of years, he actually understands the issues, is thinking deeply about the issues, and believes he has a mandate for change. And I think he's certainly showing some of that. The sad thing is that he may not be there after the next election, so we have a limited period in which to influence and to get change embedded. But I do think there's a thread there. I don't think there's a single country model that's being followed. I think there's a lot of interest in the policy department at both the Treasury and DWP, and also the Department of Health in relation to social care, about looking at other countries and taking the best of the different models that they see, but not necessarily holding out one country to be the model that they want to follow. So I think we've got a lot to learn about DC pensions from the Australians, but I think that they would admit that they haven't got everything right. I think we've got things to learn from other countries about the way they do things, the Scandinavian countries, the US, and even Chile in terms of their DC arrangements too. So I think we can learn things from elsewhere, but I don't think we can necessarily implant them into our culture and expect them to work.
I think you're right there, Alan. I think it's also a point that we've got a different history.
Yep.
So again, things were said about the annuities, and a comparison was made with Australia, which I think again was stretching it too far, because it's a different culture and it's a different system. Because Australia did throw away their pensions rule book when they brought in their superannuation scheme. Yep. So I think you're right that the combination of culture and history means that it would be wrong. Not only I don't think they're doing it, but I think it would be absolutely wrong to look to another country and say that's the one we're going to have.
But I think there is a roadmap. But I also think that we have an opportunity to influence the roadmap, because the various people, from politicians to civil servants who are supporting the policy development, are actually engaged and they're listening. So I think if you have ideas about how we can improve things, I think there is an opportunity to bend people's ears because they're open right now.